So we have the honor of welcoming one of our church members this week, Victor Luna, who is a social worker in the Los Angeles area, in the school system, in other capacities, also a seminarian. And he has been working on a process to help people deal with the emotions of the pandemic, to sort through things such as grief. And so I think you've done this. Did you do it with the deacons or Stephen ministers of the church?
Stephen minister.
The Stephen ministers, wonderful. And so they all said it was a very meaningful experience. And so they thought it would be great if Victor was able to bring that to the congregation and help us walk through the process. So I'm going to turn it over to Victor. We are so thankful to have you as part of the church community, Victor, and to be leading us.
Thank you, Jacob. So I'm going to share my screen. We'll go from there. Okay. So I'm Victor, and I'm a school social worker. And one of the things that I do as being a school social worker, I also work with a lot of community agencies, and also trying to figure out how to support our students, our families, our staff here at within LAUSD. And we realized that can everyone mute themselves so that we can everyone can hear clearly? Okay. So one of the things that we noticed was that
run up the road and see if Dave's got full power.
There we go. There we go, Victor. Sorry about that.
No worries. So one of the things we noticed is that the year 2020 really shook us all up. The year, even as we kind of come out of the pandemic, in some ways, as we look future to the vaccines, we have to start looking at how the pandemic has really kind of affected our lives. How many things have are not allowed to celebrate? How many things are we not doing? Our life, post-pandemic is going to be very different. And so we need to kind of look back, I think, and that's the first step, is to look back and figure out all the things we lost in our lives in the last year or so. So would anyone want to share anything that they lost the last year as far as activities, celebrations, opportunities to be with others? Because I think we have to start talking about those things in order to really come to terms and move on. So if anyone would want to volunteer some of the things that they've lost in the last year or so, or things that they, events, how your life is. If I can get maybe a volunteer or two to share that.
I'll jump in.
Thank you,
This is Mel Boynton, and we're missing time with our grandchild.
Thank you. Shirley or Wendy.
Visiting with my 93-year-old dad. I don't know how many more days he's going to be here, and he's healthy and everything, but I'm not with him. I'm not seeing him. I'm not hearing him. I'm not hugging him. I'm not sitting in his lap.
So we're missing a lot of opportunities, and the pandemic, I think, is really showing us that there's been a loss. The year post-pandemic, we are not going to. The life's not going to be the same. So part of our presentation is kind of shows us, let's see, some of the things we've lost. Let me see, let's see if I could do this. Give me 1 second. Okay, so we've lost our independence and freedom. Our routines, predictability. Some of us have lost employment, income. Loss of events, celebrations, graduation, prom, wedding, funeral. Loss of our entertainment and social life. Our endings. We have people we haven't been able to be with. Our physical activity, gyms are closed. Sometimes the hike trails are closed. Some of our loss of relationship and friends. loss of illness, loss of health. And maybe one of the most important things is the loss of control. There's very little we can control here with the pandemic being in our lives. And some of us have lost someone to death as well. And so this is what's going on at this moment. And post-pandemic, this is really, really gonna be very different. And however, I think we are resilient people, and we're gonna have to figure out how to deal with this. And before I move on, would anyone else would like to share regarding something important that they lost in their life, during this pandemic?
I think just spending time with family and friends.
And I would say Ashley Montague, right? Touch, loss of touch of anybody, no physical connections. A huge world of absence of touch, even holding hands or a hug or no touch. And that's a huge loss.
So this is, I think, Donna, you bring a very important point, just the opportunity to like hold and hug someone. I think that's so necessary in this time. And there's some of us who are completely isolated and do not have that opportunity. And so there's a lot going on here. And so as we look at loss, we also want to look at important to look at the model of loss and grief that Kubler-Ross created. And we look at this and let's see, a second. And so we look at denial. When March 13th is a very significant day for me. That's when the school district shut down. Once LAUSD shut down, I think because it's the second largest district in the country, I think everyone just kind of followed. And so I'm thinking, oh, you know what? This is, we have a spring break in 1 week. It's not a big deal. We're gonna get through it. And then we still have people in denial at this time, people who may not understand their anxiety, their emotions, and they want to say, this is not real. So how many of us have been in denial? Thinking this is not real. And then how many of us have been angry through this whole process? Angry at the world, angry at COVID, and I think our anger has really kind of heightened as well, as it was such a difficult year. 2020 was so difficult politically. We realize social injustices, are very present with us. And so with the pandemic in the background, I think it just even elevated our anger. So yeah, we're in denial. We're angry. We're trying to figure out, hey, how do we deal without this, with everything that's going on? Then, we start the bargaining stage. Okay, and in my, my upbringing, my history, I would say, well, God, if you do this, then I'll do this, let's bargain with God. Or even in a prior, in relationships, well, let's see if we can start all over. Let's see if we can kind of figure out ways to make this work. So we start, so we have these feelings going all over the place with us. So it's not easy. And the thing is that these feelings are not going to come 1, 2, 3. They're just going to go all over the place. Then we go into a depression. We start feeling sadness, desperation. When is this going to end? And when it's so interesting because we're around October, November, we're seeing some good news ahead. And then all of a sudden, everything changes. Everything starts going up again. The cases go up. And any glimpse of hope that we might have seen, kind of vanished. And so we start again, the anger, the depression, and we go back and forth. And even with the vaccine rollout, as we're trying to figure out who goes next, how do we do it? I'm a school social worker and I'm in education, and these ethical dilemmas that I have because the vaccine may be offered to me, but is it fair that I take it from someone who's 65 and older? And so kind of waiting and saying, what? How do I do this? Do I do it or not? And, very personal, because very personal. And I'm sure all of you have felt this in one way or another. So, and finally, acceptance. And we struggle at that. We struggle with all this, and it's very real. And as you know, it is part of all these emotions that go back and forth. Would anyone like to discuss any of their emotions here? Would anyone want to share a little bit of what they're angry about at this time regarding the whole pandemic? So is there any volunteers or anyone want to talk about the denial, that they feel, just so that, we can kind of get get some perspective on with some of you here today. Would anyone want to share?
Victor, one of the things that in terms of acceptance that I've been dealing with is my personal acceptance and then peer pressure. When you have a whole bunch of family or friends who don't kind of buy into the same place that you are in dealing with this, I think that's what happened with the huge spikes at holidays when people just couldn't bear to deny their family or friends their presence. So I'm there, and I've done that, but I still feel a lot of peer pressure.
Yeah, it's and those are the situations we're put on this time. We've never had to be in a place like that in the past, at least at this, at this level, where we're making decisions knowing that our actions may have some very severe health consequences. And how do we decide? And if you've noticed, every person has a way and has set their own rules as far as like who they let into their lives, their own bubbles. People create their own bubbles. Who do they accept in this world? And I think part of that is also, there's a shame around, hey, you're, about, hey, my bubble may be bigger than yours. My bubble may be smaller. And these feelings come out, where, some of us could be angry. Oh my gosh, I wish I could have a little bit more a bigger bubble. I wish I could make that decision to go see my parents, my grandparents, because I want to see them. And so we want to be responsible adults, citizens, but we're struggling with this. So these feelings become very personal, and it's very difficult. So would anyone else like to share some of the struggles that they deal with during this time, and some of the decisions that you have to make during this time as well? Amy?
What I really appreciate about this model, Victor, so much, thank you, is that the realization that that I think we all know that we feel each one of these randomly at unexpected times, on every single day. And that there's constantly this push to get to a level of acceptance where you kind of can rest for a while. And the reality of it is that we don't stay there. We just keep going around in these. And how wonderful it is to be able to support one another and, in realizing that that's the case and that it's okay, and feeling that support. So I just wanted to thank you for this model and way of looking at it.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, you're right. These things, we want to move to that level of acceptance, but, when we thought we were going to see some hope in, November, December, everything just turned, the world just turned on us. And it is sad to see, and I think I constantly go through these feelings.
My concern is that all of these listed sometimes happen for me within 2 hours. It's not just that you could go from denial to anger and move around to acceptance. It swirls around in my life so that I sometimes almost feel like I'm physically losing my balance.
And it's very real. You know, these feelings come throughout the day. Imagine the parents who didn't sign up to, like, you know, those who are, I mean, I'm not a parent, but those who are parents are trying to juggle work, I mean, work and making sure your children are getting the education, the deadlines that work has for us, and, you know, trying to make sure that your child is getting the education that they need. You know, it can happen within, you know, a span of 1 hour, 2 hours, as we try to figure out, how do I deal with all of this?
And it's so complex, Victor. I was counseling somebody the other day who said to the 21-year-old, if you're going to continue to see this many people, you need to move out. And then what kind of a family says that to a kid? What kind of a family? And then we went on and on and on and on in the ethical debate of who says that to some college kid, you must move out if your bubble's going to be that big. Huge, huge, complex ethical debates. What kind of loving people say that?
Yeah, it's really shaken us at our core as we try to deal with, like, very simple life situations that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And
You know,
so,
Victor, something that comes to my mind is that under normal stages of grief, one person or a family or an extended family is suffering grief, but the rest of the people more or less have it together. And right now we're all bumping into each other. So, you know, when I have to talk to a parent as a teacher, I have to be prepared for that parent to blow up when they wouldn't normally, but they're going through so much. And then, you know, I'm thinking, but I'm going through so much. And so it's just, I think it exacerbates all of those emotions because there's very few people that are just calm and joyful at this point.
thank you for sharing, Shirley. And yeah, at the edge. All of us are, and it's just a difficult time because, like Donna said, it's complex. We're dealing with people who are going through very similar situations as we are. So this is the Kubler-Ross model of grief and loss, which I think is very valid during this time. We need to start looking at it because we have to figure out, hey, what are the next steps? Even though the vaccine is on its way, we're still going to be in a place like this for maybe 6 months or a year. I was talking to a colleague of mine and they said, I don't think we may open LAUSD till October. And it's hard for me. It's hard for me because I have to work at home, and the separation between your home life and your professional life and your family life, there is no division there. When we have an opportunity to drive home to decompress from work, an opportunity to go to work, to decompress a little bit from home, right? We don't have those opportunities, those social supports that we are used to at work, and the social support that we have from extended family at times. But we are resilient people, and we will get through this. And the next slide that I have, let's see. Let's see. So this is a graph that's created by it's more of like a business kind of model using the Kubler-Ross model for grief and loss, and how that we can, like, that we're adaptable people. And many of us have learned to adapt during this time as well. We learned to, like, okay, Jen and Jacob, our pastors, you know what? We can't meet in person. What can we bring to the congregation that's going to keep us connected and that's going to keep us together? And so, the shock, the surprise, what do we do now? Denial, frustration, the depression. But then we start experimenting. How do we as people move on, move forward to a sense of a new normalcy for our lives at this time? I know that as I started working from home, I had to figure out, hey, how do I engage people with meetings? How do I create a schedule for me so that I can function as best as I could, because I'm not in my normal office environment. And then as you start seeing, changes within your life, hey, what can I do next? And how do I integrate this new style of work into my life? But it's easy to show this because we go up and then we come back again. We're working, and we think we have something figured out, and then we come back to the shock because you thought, as you figure out how to work, then other things are thrown into the table. And so we have to figure how to do this. I'm wondering if anyone wants to share how their life has been as far as like how to, experimenting and making new decisions to ensure that they are personally or even professionally or socially kind of moving ahead a little bit. Would anyone want to share with the group regarding any things that they're doing to make sure that they're moving ahead in your work life, professionally, recreationally?
I could share, this is Debbie Griffin. I could share that I figured out what I can control. So I can control how much I exercise. I can control how much I eat. I can control how much I sleep. And so the loss of control was very difficult, but I've realized that there are things I can't control, and it's up to me to figure those out and make a plan and do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. No, that's true. And that's true. Anyone else like to share?
I'm Ellen. I discovered an exercise class online. Actually, I was invited to it, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I am in front of my Zoom, doing exercise. I've lost 20 pounds. Anyway, it's just been, and we pray afterwards. So it's just a great experience for me as far as that goes and integrating it. And if I had to drive to the place, I don't know that I would have the time. So it's nice being able to walk from your kitchen right into, your computer room.
So, well, thank you for sharing that, because those are the kind of things that we start kind of discovering. Hey, what can I do? And so I started walking in order to break my day up. I started walking before, beginning work, my break during lunch, and after work, because that allows me to somehow disconnect and have like structure within my life. So I ask you, all of you, what can you do at this time so that you can create some kind of healthy structure for you, so that you can feel that you're in control? And I know that when I'm walking, it's a physical exercise. I'm not in the air, and I am, it's disconnecting me from the work that I'm doing, at my home. So anyone else would like to share regarding how are they trying to integrate some of their life at this point?
Well, one thing that I decided early on was I could not cope with all the negativity, both in the country and so I started a little memory book. I'm now in my 4th volume, and I have to list 4 things a day that are positive. I can't go to bed until I figured out 4, and some of them might be a math, but it gives me, I enjoy paging back through and seeing some of the things that have occurred all along the way that have given kind of a pattern to what's happening.
So you've kind of found some structure within this time, and things to do, so to like keep you going.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the kind of things that we're looking, excuse me. That we look at, hey, there is, we're resilient people. Yeah. And there's many things going on. And I think recognizing where we are, our feelings, our that anger, that frustration, I think it allows us to kind of step back a little bit. And hey, what do I do? What can I take control of? So, and even as a church, as I, participate in some of the church, the online church events, keeping us together. I know that I look forward to the Monday night prayer vigil that Amy leads, because it's, it brings me that peace that I need at that moment in my life. And I encourage you to look at all the activities that the church has to see what resonates with you. I think one of the the lucky things is that it's online, and and that's I don't have to drive all the way out to Claremont to participate in this prayer circle. I can do it now. I wish I could do it in person, believe me, because I think we all need that social interaction. But I think it's important to realize, hey, what is offered at the church? What resonates with me? What makes me feel connected to my church community? And how do I feel the presence of God at this time as well? And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So, resiliency, 6 domains. We still, even at this time, we still have some kind of vision, some kind of purpose for our lives. Yes, it's limited, but there's things we can control and there's things we can't control. What are those things that we can control? And then within those things that we can control, how can we make purpose? How do we find purpose with that? And I'm thinking about it. Hey, what are some of the goals that I want to reach at this time? For example, without thinking, as I started walking every day, I've lost 25 pounds. It started out with 12, and then I said, okay, maybe I'll go up to 20. And I set a purposeful goal to reach 20, and I go, how about 25? And so, those are very simple, basic goals that we can set for ourselves within the constraints that we have. So I want you to think about, hey, what are some of these things that we can do at this moment in our life to have some control, some purpose, some goal, and to kind of integrate our lives. Also, the collaboration. Hey, at least professionally, hey, how do I work better with some of my colleagues who find myself in the same situation? Last week, a friend of mine called. She goes, Victor, can we Zoom and work together for an hour? And I go, well, how will that work? You work, I work, and we can interact for a little bit. And so for about an hour or so, she was answering her emails. I was answering some emails, and I was kind of going back and forth, just kind of like connecting with her. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And I mean, how can we connect with others at this time? How do we create these support networks that we need? Also, knowing that, composure, hey, our emotions. We're going through a bunch of them throughout the day. Like someone mentioned earlier, within 2 hours, you go through all the Kubler-Ross model emotions of the anger and grief and all of that, because it's very real. So we feel this throughout the day. So what calms me down? What keeps me in control? Who can I call? What can I do at this time in my life to bring that peace that I need? And these are questions that we should ask ourselves. And I watch maybe an hour of news because I feel like I am bombarded by so much information, and it could be overwhelming. So what keeps you, calm and control? What are those TV shows that you can watch, that you're comfortable binge watching, that you're not going to feel any guilt or anything like that? So very simple things that kind of keep us going, and we need to recognize this. Health. Okay, how can we keep our sleeping patterns as normal as we can? How do we keep a structure? If I was sleeping at 10:30 pre-pandemic times, can I get back to that? Can I exercise creatively in this new world? We heard earlier that someone goes and does the exercises with an online community. I take these walks. What are some things that some of you do for your health at this time that you can share with us, that you can share with the rest of the group? Does anyone want to share?
I've been doing online yoga classes, and that's always, really calming. So good for me mentally as well as physically.
Thank you for sharing. So, yeah, let's see what we can find. online. I know that I've walked through some parks as well as I do my walking, and there's people out there doing, socially distanced, doing some group classes. And that's also, yeah, that's another question that we have to kind of consider. Is it the right thing for us? Is it, do I feel comfortable doing that? But each person has their own, they set their own guidelines, and who am I to judge as far as like how they're getting that exercise? And but being responsible and understanding, hey, this is what I'm comfortable with. This is what I'm doing at this time to keep myself healthy. So what I would encourage you to find that that a pattern of exercising, sleeping, nutrition as well. Are we eating right? Are we taking care of our bodies? Are we? I mean, it's so comfortable to have those foods that give us comfort. I mean, it's so good, I mean, I love desserts, and I could eat a whole chocolate cake if I wanted to. But I have to realize that there are limits, and I have to understand, hey, I can only do so much. I can only eat so much. We're also resilient people. We also have this tenacity. We're persistent people. We're going to bounce back, and we're bouncing back at this moment. We're figuring out how to live during this pandemic. We're figuring out how to worship together, even though we're not together. One of the things also, as I think about routines and things like that, something that has helped me in my life is understanding that because our days have become blurry, sometimes we may not know when the weekend is. Because sometimes we're maybe doing some work on a Saturday or whatever, we forget what day of the week it may be. I would encourage all of us to kind of look at Sunday a little differently. We know we're going to watch our sermon, and there's a couple of other activities we can do on Sunday. But what can we do to mark time to say, hey, Sunday is because I want to make it a little bit more different, because we are, as a Christian community, we keep the Sabbath day holy in the way we decide to keep it holy. But how do we make it a little bit more special? How do we make this day or the morning on Sunday morning a little bit more different? As we, join everyone online worship, what can we do to intentionally come together as a community, or you as a person, to say, hey, this is my Sunday, this is my routine. Hey, I'm going to, I'm gonna put on a nice shirt this morning for church. Or what, if you're comfortable being in bed or whatever, just make sure it's an intentional kind of thing. And that's some ideas and some suggestions. So these are some 6 domains of resiliency. But instead, we're also a Christian community. And what brings us closer to God? How do we recognize love in our God? The serenity prayer, the courage to change the things that I can't, and the wisdom to understand the difference. Control. What can I have control of? What is beyond my control? What brings you closer to the divine, to the Creator? And online, there's I'm glad that whoever shared the fact that they go, I think it was Ellen, that you shared about doing an exercise class and then praying. I think that's pretty cool if you think about it. And that resonates. But in your life, how do you find, the love of God, or how do you find the presence of God in your life? It's a prayer. And are you intentionally making time for prayer? Are you, there's a Lectio Divina that many churches are offering throughout, during this time online. That's a way of, centering our thoughts and around the divine. Scripture reading. Hey, is there an online Bible study group that I can join? Or another kind of group or prayer group that I can join? Can I, join in the, with like a singing community and sing hymns, if that brings me closer to God and the divine? So we have to also, I think during this time, because we are a Christian community, God, we have to look for those things that resonate with us. And I'm wondering if anyone here would like to share anything they do to bring them closer to the divine at this, at this time, during this very difficult times.
Yeah, this is Mel. We pray a lot. We used to pray over dinner. Now we pray over every meal we have.
Nice. Thank you for sharing that, Mel. Thank you. Sandy, what are you doing to connect with God during this time a little bit more?
Well, I'm blessed to have small groups of friends who gather together. In fact, I get into a little bit of Zoom overload sometimes, and email overload, and 5 devotionals a day on the email. And so I really oversaturate to the point sometimes that I need to step back and absorb instead of just taking in.
Thank you for sharing, Sandy. Yeah, and I think there's limits also. We might be over Zoom at times, right? And there's moments when I've been in like 3 or 4 hours Zoom meetings. I'm answering 2 hours of email, and I want to get to a more recreational Zoom, and I'm overloaded as well. So understanding our balances, what can I handle, and being true to that. So sharing, thank you for sharing that, Sandy. And, Mel, thank you also for sharing that opportunity to pray more with, more than dinner, it's at every meal now. Whatever it brings to your life at this moment, it brings it. So I think we need to be more intentional about things like that. Lastly, I want to share the scripture right here, Matthew 11:28-30. Come to me, all that ye are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So what is the invitation? The invitation is to come to me. And if we looked at the kind of like the psychological or mental health kind of ideas in this scripture, what, control again, what do we have control of? What we have no control over? And those things that we have no control over, who do we leave them to? The invitation here is that let's bring them to Christ, to Jesus. Let's, in prayer, in however way we're doing it, and let it go. The invitation is to come, to learn from him. And we will find rest for our souls. It's yes, it's a very difficult. We lost control of many things. And if we look back real quick at this slide, look at everything we're dealing with. And we go back to this slide, the invitation to take some rest, to know what we can control, to know what to let go of. So this is my presentation for this morning. If anyone has any questions or comments, I think we have up to like about 5 more minutes or so. So anyone want to share something that they've done or anything that they, during this pandemic, that helped their life, anything that would help uplift the group, we can do it for the next, or questions you may have as well.
Victor, this is Amy. I just want to thank you this is so focused and so practical. And it's also really good to gather together and find out what you know, what other people are doing and how people are continuing to connect. And I think one of the really bright spots about the pandemic has been all of the things that have emerged that we can connect to at any time during the day. You know, you can find centering prayer groups all day long if you want to, or exercise groups, or, you know, things right now like the People's Inauguration movement that Sounds True is sponsoring, where, you know, for an hour you can hear really amazing speakers for free, including UCC's Tracy Blackman speak on, you know, how we go through all of these stages, and they are highlighting the stages of grief that you've talked about, Victor, in this process. And that's just one of many that I think are such a gift, that people are so generous with their time and their expertise right now. So it's a great time of learning.
Thank you for sharing that, Amy. I know that there's a lot of good things out there as people are supporting each other, you know, online throughout the world. Thank you for reminding us of that. Anyone else would like to share anything or comment or any questions?
Sure, Victor. I think as you put up that Bible verse and, you know, going back to my thought that everybody's going through something right now. Sometimes it's really hard to go to someone else and lament your little problem because they have a bigger problem. And I think that's where God is going to be so good for us, is God will listen to all of it. God can take it all. God wants to hear it all. God already knows it all anyway. And I think of that old hymn, Just As I Am. And it's like, that's how God takes us, is the way we are. God knows anyway. And so I think that is the place to go when we feel frustrated and we feel a little embarrassed to be, you know, whining to someone else at this point. It's the place to go.
And it's very healthy for our minds. You know, it's very within our mental health, controlling, you know, our anxiety, taking intentional time to calm down at that time, knowing that we may be out of control, knowing that I need to step back before I say something that I should you know, that I need to consider before I say it. And the aspects how prayer, in whatever way we practice prayer, calms us and allows us to reconsider our thoughts and be kinder to each other. So. Okay. Anyone else, or then I'll leave it up to, I'll hand it back to Jacob if anyone else.
All right, awesome. Let's give a digital round of applause to Victor. The words to be able to share, as Shirley said, whatever we're feeling right now, to be able to think about how we can process these emotions. I think that Jan Wright put it really great, that we go through this whole cycle in a span of 2 hours sometimes. And so it's good to be able to have a chance to pause and to reflect and to hear this great teaching. So thank you for helping us to remember we do have some control over our lives right now, and ways that we can focus and calm ourselves each day, knowing that it's a daily journey, an hourly journey at times. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in worship in a little bit. Just a few reminders today after the worship service. If you want to spend the whole morning with Claremont UCC, we have our biannual congregational meeting. So we just need to make sure there's 82 people there to have quorum, 10% member quorum. So would love to have you there if you can make it. Next week for Adult Ed, we have a theology professor joining us from the University of Aberdeen. So that's what's fun about Zoom. Someone's going to Skype with us from across the pond. Or Zoom with us from across the pond. So look forward to that announcement this week, and see you soon in worship.